The Lantos Foundation is extraordinarily pleased and gratified to be giving the Lantos Prize this year to Chen Guangcheng. He joins a very distinguished pantheon, if you will, of prior recipients of this prize, really iconic figures in the global human rights community. And he absolutely belongs among them because we have here a true David taking on the Goliath of the Chinese state. Hard to imagine a more intimidating Goliath in some senses, but his crusade on behalf of rule of law, manifested in a variety of ways, has been extraordinarily courageous and has really captured the imagination and the attention of the world at a time when China, in transition, really needs to be held to account. They need to understand that human rights must be part of the future of China.
Chen Guangcheng grew up in a rural village, no running water, no electricity, from very humble beginnings, had a fever when he was a child, which left him blinded, and despite those realities, has become a threat to the entire government of China.
This is an amazing story. He is blind, everybody knows that. He's from a very poor peasant family and had no resources to do anything.
Chen Guangcheng began working on disability rights issues and started raising the fact that a lot of taxes were being collected from people with disabilities that under Chinese law, government officials had no right to collect. He subsequently learned about a range of practices where the Chinese government was engaging in pollution and polluting of the environment. And into the early 2000s, he began to look at and hearing about the numbers of women who were victims of the one-child policy in China, and the fact that the Chinese government engaged in widespread forced abortions and sterilizations. The most outspoken dissidents in China, which include lawyers and journalists, human rights activists, political activists, face immense persecution and pressure. The Chinese government does not shy away from not only going after the dissidents themselves, but persecuting their families and treating their families terribly badly.
He was under house arrest and constantly received tortures from the guards. And people kept going to his village and even to his house, trying to visit him. In most cases, only to receive beatings from the guards.
And the idea that he managed to escape from this house arrest and make his way to Beijing and ultimately into the US Embassy was an extraordinary and courageous action on his part.
Nobody wants to live without dignity, without freedom. So Chinese people demand for democracy, demand for freedom.
I would say that there is very much a reckoning that's going to come to bear for the Chinese government, where they either decide they're going to make some serious reforms or the system collapses upon itself. I think that the idea that a country of 1.3 billion people and its government feels it necessary to come down so incredibly hard and harshly on the back of one man, as is the case with Chen Guangcheng, speaks to the insecurity of the Chinese government and speaks to the fundamental fear that it has of its own people.
How can we change the situation? It takes people like Chen Guangcheng to stand up for himself and for others.
What you see by their actions is inspiring tens of thousands of others to take smaller acts that are perhaps slightly less risky in order to stand up to the problems of the Chinese government and the one-party system.
Anything can serve as a trigger for a big-scale demonstration which would eventually topple the regime. So, but nobody knows where the last straw on the camel's back is.
Chen Guangcheng will be the first recipient who never met and worked with my father on the cause of human rights while my father was still alive. He's a very young man. He has very bravely stepped forward to carry this cause forward. And I feel a sense almost of the passing of the torch. My father devoted his life to the fight for human rights on every continent and on behalf of every persecuted group. And I know how pleased and how really moved he would be to see this brave young man now receiving the prize that bears his name.
This award manifests once again the international recognition of the Chinese democracy movement. That sent very clear signal to the people on the ground that the international community cares, the international community watches, and the international community gives support.
Chen is merely the tip of the spear, as we speak, as to the kinds of changes that are coming in China and that will need to come to China.
The Lantos Foundation is carrying the torch from the congressman forward, and this is a great encouragement for many, many people around the world. If the world leaders have such a heart and a mind and a vision and a courage that Tom Lantos had, if they all do what Tom Lantos did, China will be different. The whole world would be different.